Late at night, far out in the desert, everything was quiet. The sky looked almost too still, with only a few stars blinking behind thin clouds. The people living in the nearby town were used to silence at this hour. Most of them were already asleep, and the rest were getting ready to close their shops or check their animals before turning off the lights. Nothing unusual ever happened there. It was the kind of place where every sound could be guessed right away: wine, insects, maybe a far-off car. But that night, something new arrived, something no one was prepared for. It started with a single flash, bright enough to wake a few people who thought it was lightning. But when they looked outside, the sky was clear. Some turned back to their beds, but others stayed near their windows, because the light didn't look like normal lightning. It had a strange bluish color that faded slowly instead of disappearing quickly. A couple of people stepped outside to see more clearly, thinking maybe an electric line had burst somewhere. But before anyone could understand what was happening, a second flash came, one stronger, wider, and shaking the air with a deep, distant vibration. A few people grabbed their phones and pointed them toward the desert. They couldn't see the source of the light, only the sky glowing from a faraway point. One person said it looked like a falling star. Another said it was too slow for that. Someone joked that maybe an airplane had its light stuck. But jokes didn't last long, because the third flash arrived like a wave. It rolled through the sky, soft at first, then narrowing down as if something was cutting through the clouds. A low hum followed right after, a sound no one had ever heard before. It wasn't loud, but it was constant, like a long breath from something enormous. Within minutes, a few locals jumped into their vehicles and drove out toward the dunes to see what had crashed. People in that area never ignored strange lights in the desert. Even if it was just a fallen drone or a damaged weather balloon, they wanted to check before it caused trouble. They followed the direction of the glow, which now looked like a faint blue fog resting on the sand. As they got closer, the air itself felt warmer. Dust swirled in small spirals, even though there was no wind. What they found next didn't look like any aircraft they had ever seen. It was small, no bigger than a regular car, but its shape was unusual. Instead of metal pieces scattered around, the whole object seemed almost smooth, like one solid piece. It was half buried in the sand, glowing from inside like a faint heartbeat. Some people hesitated to go near it. Others walked closer, but kept a safe distance. One person called the local authorities, and another kept a flashlight pointed at the strange object. Even though it was glowing on its own, there was no sound coming from the craft. Only a tiny flicker of light running across its surface like it was breathing. The group exchanged nervous looks. They didn't know whether it was safe, dangerous, or something that could explode if touched. But their answer came unexpectedly when the craft suddenly gave one quiet pulse of light and then opened along a thin line in the middle. It wasn't like a door opening, more like the surface simply separated on its own. Everyone stepped back quickly, raising their arms out of instinct. For a moment, nothing else happened. Then a shadow moved inside the craft, small and shaky. A few people wondered if it was a hurt animal. The opening widened, and something slowly stepped out. It wasn't big, shorter than most adults, but its shape was nothing like a human. It moved gently, almost weakly, as if it had been inside for too long. Its skin had a soft silver tone that reflected the blue glow around it. Its eyes were large, tired, but filled with a kind of fear that made it look more lost than dangerous. Someone whispered, asking if everyone else was seeing the same thing. Another person said to stay back because they didn't know if it was safe. The creature looked around, confused, then lifted a hand slightly as if asking for help. But no one knew how to respond. They didn't understand its language, and it probably didn't understand theirs. One thing was clear, though: it wasn't attacking. It wasn't even standing firmly. Its legs shook as it tried to step forward. The people watching could tell it was hurt or exhausted. Still, no one dared to get close. Fear kept them frozen in place. Even though no one had spoken to it, the creature seemed to understand that everyone was afraid. It lowered its head a little and wrapped its arms around itself as if trying to stay warm. The wind finally picked up, tossing sand across its feet. The creature blinked slowly, clearly struggling to stay awake. One person whispered to call for more help. Another said maybe authorities should take over instead of ordinary people risking themselves. The creature heard the talking and took a small step back, thinking someone was angry or worried. But then something unexpected happened, so simple, yet so powerful that it changed the entire atmosphere around the crash site. A dog barked from behind the group. It wasn't an aggressive bark. It sounded more like a curious, alert call. The dog belonged to one of the rescuers who had brought him along out of habit. He was trained to help in emergencies, especially when someone was hurt. The dog pushed his way through the group and stood at the front, ears high, tail steady, not wagging too fast, not stiff. He was simply reading the situation, the way dogs do far better than humans sometimes. Everyone tried stopping him, calling him back, but the dog ignored them. He looked at the creature carefully. The creature looked back at him with wide eyes, unsure what this four-legged being was. The dog slowly stepped forward, one soft paw at a time. The night was completely quiet now. Even the wind had paused for a moment. The creature lowered itself slightly, not out of defensiveness, but because it didn't want to appear threatening. The dog moved even closer until he stood right in front of the alien being. The creature lifted a trembling hand without thinking. The dog sniffed it gently and then touched his nose against the creature's palm. The crowd held their breath. Everyone expected something strange to happen. Instead, the creature relaxed for the first time, letting out a soft breath that sounded like relief. The dog sat down right beside it, as if saying, "You're safe." That small moment broke the fear in the air. The people watching didn't suddenly understand everything, but they understood one thing. If the dog trusted the creature, then maybe it wasn't a threat at all. Someone whispered that the creature might need help instead of being left alone. Another person pointed out that it didn't look dangerous. It looked scared. The creature slowly reached toward the dog again and placed its hand gently on the dog's head. A faint glow shimmered around its fingers, but it wasn't harmful. The glow faded as soon as the creature relaxed. The dog didn't move away. He stayed there calmly, almost proudly, as if he had found a lost soul who needed him. The rescuers took a quiet step forward. Instead of fear, they now felt a small sense of responsibility. The creature's legs finally gave out, and it slowly sank to the sand. The dog immediately stood up and leaned against it, offering support. The creature looked up at the humans, not with fear this time, but with a look that clearly asked for help without words. And for the first time since the strange lights appeared in the sky, the humans stepped closer, not to capture it, not to push it away, but simply to see if they could help someone who had fallen from the stars and landed alone in a world where no one knew its name. As more people arrived at the crash site, they were surprised to see the dog calmly sitting beside the strange visitor from the sky. The creature had stopped shaking, but it still looked very weak, and its eyes followed every movement around it with slow, cautious attention. The blue glow from the broken craft had almost faded, leaving only the moonlight and the soft light from the flashlights in people's hands. The dog stayed close, as if he had already decided that protecting this unusual being was now his job. The creature raised one hand and lightly touched the dog's shoulder, a gentle motion that made everyone watching feel a little less afraid. It was strange enough to see something not human walking on Earth, but seeing it connect with a simple rescue dog made the moment feel almost natural, like two lost beings had found comfort in each other. The dog tilted his head, studying the creature the way dogs study everything with curiosity, not fear. The creature made a soft sound, almost like a breath mixed with a tiny melody. The dog's ears perked up. Nobody else understood the sound, but the dog seemed to. He moved closer and sat so his side pressed against the creature. People whispered among themselves, still unsure what to do. Some wanted to wait for officials who were already on their way. Others felt a strange pull to help right away. After all, the creature didn't look dangerous. It looked exhausted, scared, and completely alone. One of the rescuers stepped forward slowly and knelt down a few feet away. He didn't reach out yet. He simply spoke in a calm tone, the same tone people use when comforting an injured animal. Even though the creature couldn't understand the words, the soft sound made it lift its head in a more relaxed way. The dog looked between the human and the creature, as if encouraging both sides to trust each other. It was odd how much the dog seemed to control the entire situation, without saying a single word. The creature pushed its hand slightly into the sand, trying to get up, but its legs buckled again, and it fell forward. The dog instantly stood and barked once a sharp but concerned sound. A few people hurried forward, though they stopped right before touching the creature. They didn't know if touching it would hurt it or them. But the creature didn't move away. Instead, it looked up at the humans with tired eyes that silently asked for help. The rescuers finally gathered enough courage to help. They didn't grab the creature directly. Instead, they brought a thick blanket from one of the vehicles. They placed it gently near the creature and nodded, trying to show through gestures that they wanted to lift it safely. The creature seemed to understand. It leaned slightly, just enough to allow them to support its weight. The dog walked right next to them as the rescuers lifted the creature with the blanket, making sure it didn't fall. Every step was slow and careful. The creature wasn't heavy, but its body was unfamiliar, and nobody wanted to hurt it. They carried it to a flat area away from the broken craft. The dog followed, sometimes walking ahead as if checking the path, sometimes behind as if guarding. Once they laid the creature on the sand, the dog curled up right beside it. People gathered around, forming a loose circle, but nobody stepped too close. The creature's breathing was uneven, like someone who had been fighting for too long. The dog rested his chin on the creature's arm, giving small nudges from time to time, almost encouraging it to stay awake. The creature watched the humans, studying their movements. It reached up once and touched its own chest, then pointed toward the sky a slow, difficult gesture, as if trying to explain where it had come from. The rescuers looked at each other, confused but still listening. One of them quietly said that the creature must have been running from something. Another said maybe it had crashed by accident. The creature lowered its hand, realizing maybe they didn't understand, and simply closed its eyes again. The wind began to get colder. The desert at night could be harsh, and the creature's skin didn't look suited for such temperatures. A few people hurried to bring more blankets. They wrapped the creature gently, leaving space for the dog to stay close. The dog sniffed the blankets and then rested his head again, satisfied that the creature was warmer now. By this time, more vehicles had arrived, and a few officials stepped out. They had been told there was a strange crash, but they weren't prepared for what they saw. At first, they tried to push the crowd back. But when they saw the dog lying beside the creature protectively, they hesitated. They asked the rescuers what had happened. The rescuers explained everything: the lights, the crash, and how the dog was the only one who dared to make the first move. The officials moved closer, but the dog stood up and growled softly. It wasn't an angry growl, it was a warning. Even the simplest growl from a loyal dog can express what 100 words cannot. Be gentle. Don't hurt this one. The officials paused. The dog returned to the creature's side, room still in his stance, but calm. The creature opened its eyes slightly at the sound of unfamiliar voices. It watched the new humans carefully, unsure of their intentions. One of the officials knelt down slowly and reached forward. The creature flinched, and the dog instantly barked, making the official pull his hand back. Everyone understood now. The dog was not leaving. And more importantly, the creature trusted the dog more than anyone else there. After some discussion, the officials agreed to move slowly. A few of them suggested taking the creature to a secure facility immediately, but the rescuers objected. They said the creature was too weak and might not survive rough handling or a sudden relocation. The officials reluctantly agreed to let the creature rest a little longer before making any big decisions. They stepped back, giving space that the creature watched the dog closely and touched his back with slow, gentle motions. It seemed fascinated by the dog's fur, by the warmth, by the steady breathing. Maybe on its world, creatures didn't look or act like this. Maybe kindness was rare there. Or maybe the creature had lost so much in its journey that the simple loyalty of one animal felt like a miracle. The dog stayed alert. His eyes scanned every human who approached, even those who meant well. He leaned into the creature whenever it shivered. At one point, the creature made a sound that almost resembled a soft sigh. The dog nudged its hand with his nose, and the creature gave a faint smile, or something close to a smile. The rescuers noticed this tiny expression and felt their fear melt even more. They offered water in a small container. The creature didn't drink it at first. It studied the cup, unsure. The dog sniffed the water and then licked a little, showing that it was safe. Only then did the creature reach for the cup and drink small sips, copying the dog's confidence. The people around them were amazed. It wasn't the humans who convinced the creature to trust them. It was the dog who taught the creature to understand simple gestures of safety. As the night stretched on, the creature grew more tired. Its eyes kept closing, but every time it drifted too far, the dog nudged it back awake gently. The creature responded to these nudges like a new companion trying to learn the ways of a world it didn't belong to. The crowd began to thin out as some people headed home. But others stayed, not because they were forced to, but because something about the sight touched them deeply. If a dog could show acceptance to a being from another world, then maybe humans could learn to do the same. The creature leaned its head against the dog's side. Its breathing finally became stable, though still slow. The dog stayed awake, ears sharp, eyes alert. He looked like a guard, protecting a new friend who had fallen from the sky and needed anyone to stay close. The moon moved across the sky, casting a gentle light over the quiet group. Everything felt calm for the first time since the strange lights had appeared. The creature was no longer shaking. The humans were no longer afraid. And the dog, without understanding the importance of his actions, had become the one hero who stepped forward when no one else dared to. That night in the desert, a bond formed between a simple earth dog and a lost princess from the stars, one that would change both of their lives in ways no one could have imagined. By the time the sun began to rise, the desert had changed from cold darkness to warm light. The people who had stayed through the night rubbed their eyes, stretched their arms, and looked around as the sky turned soft orange. The creature from the crash still lay on the blankets, but it looked different, now not as frightened, not as tense. And the reason for that calm was lying right beside it, still awake, still guarding, still watching every movement around them, the loyal rescue dog. All night long, the dog hadn't moved far from the creature. Whenever someone stepped too close, he lifted his head and stared until they backed up. Whenever the creature stirred or tried to sit up, he helped by nudging or shifting his body. It was as if he understood that the creature needed him more than anyone else did. When the warm morning breeze touched the creature's face, it opened its eyes slowly. For a moment, It looked confused, like it expected to be somewhere else. Maybe it thought it was still inside its damaged ship. Maybe it expected danger. But then it noticed the dog's head resting near its hand, and its eyes relaxed again. The dog lifted his head and wagged his tail slowly, letting the creature know it was safe. The humans standing around noticed this small moment and felt something gentle settle over them. Whatever this creature was, it clearly wasn't harmful. If it had wanted to hurt anyone, it could have tried during the night. But instead, it had stayed still, tired, injured, and quietly accepting help from the dog. The officials who had left earlier returned with more equipment. They had brought scanners, medical supplies, and protective gear. They moved carefully toward the creature, but the dog immediately stood in front of it. One official raised a hand, signaling the others to stop. Nobody wanted the dog to feel threatened. They had seen how important he was in keeping the creature calm. The creature watched the humans with a bit of fear again. But when the dog gently stepped forward and sniffed one of the boxes the officials brought, the creature relaxed. It seemed to follow the dog's lead, trusting whatever he trusted. The officials tried scanning the creature with a small device, but the creature flinched when it made a buzzing sound. The dog barked sharply, warning them to be more gentle. A younger official knelt down and turned off the sound function, then held the device out for the dog to inspect. The dog sniffed it, allowed it, and then looked back at the creature. Only then did the officials try again, slowly and carefully. The scan showed the creature's temperature was lower than a human's. Its heartbeat was lighter too, almost like a rhythm mixed with soft vibrations. The officials couldn't understand everything, but they agreed the creature was in no immediate danger. It was simply exhausted and needed time. The rescuers offered food, though nobody knew what the creature ate. They brought fruits, soft bread, and even soup in a cup. The creature stared at the food, unsure. It reached out and touched the fruit carefully, but didn't take a bite. So the dog walked over, sniffed a small piece of bread, and gently nudged it forward. The creature watched and tried to copy him. It picked up the bread, smelled it, and took a very small bite. The moment it swallowed, everyone watching let out a breath they didn't even realize they were holding. Something so simple, eating a piece of bread, felt like a huge step toward building trust. A few children from the town had arrived with their parents. They stayed back, whispering excitedly, watching the creature with big eyes. One of them held a little toy in her hand and asked quietly if the creature liked toys. Her parent told her to stay behind them, but the creature had already noticed her voice. The dog walked over to the girl, sniffed her hand, then looked at the creature. He wagged his tail slowly, encouraging the creature to look as well. The creature watched the toy in the girl's hand, a small wooden animal, and tilted its head with curiosity. For the first time since landing on Earth, the creature made a soft sound that almost resembled a laugh. The sound wasn't loud. It was light, like a whisper of joy. The girl smiled and held the toy out. Her parent tried to pull her hand back, but the creature raised its hand gently, showing no threat. The dog stood between them, making sure everyone behaved calmly. The creature touched the wooden animal and examined it, turning it slowly with its fingers. The simple toy seemed fascinating to it. That little moment melted even the toughest doubts in the officials' minds. If a child could stand near the creature without fear, maybe it wasn't something dangerous at all. The crowd grew slowly as more people from the town arrived. Curious faces appeared around the dunes, some carrying water, some bringing more blankets, others simply coming to see the visitor from the sky. The creature didn't react badly. Instead, it seemed to observe the humans with a gentle kind of wonder, as if studying how people behaved, how they spoke, how they moved. Every time someone stepped too close, the dog positioned himself carefully, making sure the creature wasn't overwhelmed. The creature leaned on the dog, when it felt tired and reached out to touch his fur from time to time, as if learning about Earth through him. As the day grew brighter, the officials decided it was time to move the creature somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, away from the desert sun and the growing crowd. But when they tried to lift the creature again, the dog blocked them, standing firmly with his front paws apart. One of the rescuers came forward, crouched beside the dog, and placed a hand on his back. He spoke to him calmly, explaining softly that they weren't trying to hurt the creature. The dog listened, but his eyes remained alert. The creature touched the dog's head and made a soft sound, almost like telling him it was okay. The dog finally stepped aside, but he stayed very close as the officials began to lift the creature gently. They placed it on a portable stretcher and made sure the dog could walk right next to it. The creature reached out and kept its hand resting on the dog's fur as they carried it toward the vehicles. People followed slowly, watching with quiet respect. Nobody wanted to scare the creature or disrupt the moment. It felt like the town had united around a simple idea. If the dog believed this being deserved care, then maybe truly did. Before placing the creature in the back of a large transport van, the officials hesitated. They weren't sure if the dog was allowed inside. But the creature looked frightened when the dog stepped away. It reached for him, its fingers trembling. That one gesture changed everything. The officials opened the door wider and invited the dog inside. The dog jumped in without hesitation and settled beside the creature on the stretcher. The creature placed its hand on his back again, steadying itself, drawing confidence from his presence. The dog simply lay there, eyes half closed, calm but alert like a guardian who understood his purpose perfectly. The van's doors closed slowly, and for a moment, everyone outside watched quietly. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't confusion. It was something closer to hope. The creature had found the only being in the entire town who didn't judge it, didn't fear it, didn't pull away. And because of that bond, everyone else found the courage to help too. The vehicle began to move, driving down the desert road toward a safer place where the creature could rest and recover. The dog stayed close, refusing to leave its side in that peaceful moment. As the sun rose higher, something became clear to everyone who had witnessed the night. Sometimes the most loyal heart doesn't belong to a human. Sometimes the greatest courage comes from a creature who understands kindness without needing to speak a single word. And for the alien princess lost, frightened and alone on a strange planet, it was the dog who became her first friend on Earth. The drive from the desert to the small emergency shelter felt longer than usual, even though the road was mostly straight and empty. Inside the van, the creature lay on the stretcher, wrapped in soft blankets. The dog stayed right beside it, keeping his body close enough to give warmth and comfort. Every time the van shook a little over bumps, the creature grabbed the dog's fur with gentle but frightened fingers. The dog didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer and kept still, letting the creature know that nothing bad would happen. The officials in the front seats drove quietly. Nobody played music. Nobody talked loudly. Even their breathing seemed softer than usual. They knew the creature wasn't dangerous, but they could see that it was fragile, confused, and unsure about this new world. The dog, who understood without needing instructions, became a silent bridge between species. Every minute, the bond grew deeper. When they reached the shelter, a plain building made of concrete and metal panels, the sun was already high. Heat shimmered above the ground. A few more officials stood outside, watching the van approach. They had prepared a quiet room just in case, a place with clean sheets, water, and soft lighting. They didn't know what the creature needed, but they tried to make the environment as calm as possible. The van stopped and the doors opened. The creature blinked at the sudden brightness, but didn't panic because the dog stepped out first. The dog waited near the back of the stretcher until the creature was gently lifted and carried out. The moment the creature was outside, it reached for the dog again. The dog padded over and walked right next to the stretcher as it was brought inside. The room they placed the creature in was simply a clean bed, a window with curtains, and a table of water and food. Once the stretcher was lowered and the creature was moved onto the bed, the dog immediately jumped up beside it. The officials exchanged looks but chose not to stop him. They had already realized that without the dog, the creature would shut down again. The creature sat upright slowly with the dog's help. It looked around the room, touching the blanket, the soft pillow, even the wall. Everything seemed new and strange to it. The dog watched patiently, as if explaining the world with his eyes. After a few minutes, one rescuer brought a small notebook and a pencil. He didn't want to scare the creature with machines, so he tried something simple. He sat on the floor a short distance away, crossed his legs, and drew a picture of the creature's ship, a rough shape, but close enough. Then he pointed to the creature, then the drawing, hoping it would understand the question. The creature studied the picture for a long time. Then it raised one hand and placed it gently on its chest. Its expression changed, its eyes softened, its shoulders dropped, and its breath became shaky, almost sad. The dog nudged its side, sensing the emotion. The rescuer understood. The ship meant something painful. Maybe it had been attacked. Maybe the creature had lost people inside it. Maybe it had come here because it had nowhere else left to go. The rescuer drew another picture, this time a simple house with a sun above it. Then he pointed around the room, trying to say they wanted to give the creature safety, not harm. The creature touched the drawing again, letting his fingers trace the picture slowly. It didn't fully understand, but it understood kindness. Later in the day, the creature finally attempted to speak. Its voice was soft and musical, like a whisper mixed with wind. Nobody understood the words, but they felt the emotion in them: fear, confusion, maybe even gratitude. The dog raised his head and listened closely. When the creature spoke again, the dog let out a tiny whine, rested his head on the creature's lap, and closed his eyes. The officials watching realized something important. The dog could understand the creature better than any human could. Not the words, but the emotions. Dogs had always been great at sensing feelings, and this creature stranded on a strange planet needed emotional understanding more than anything else. As the afternoon passed, the creature tried to stand. Its legs were still shaky, but with the dog walking beside it, it managed a few steps. It touched objects gently: tables, walls, a chair, almost as if memorizing the feeling of everything. When it touched the cold window glass, it pulled back in surprise, then laughed softly when the dog pushed his nose against the same glass. A few rescuers watched from the doorway. One whispered that the creature acted almost like a child discovering things for the first time. Another whispered that maybe it wasn't a child at all, maybe its species just behaved differently. The officials discussed moving the creature to a bigger, more secure location. Some wanted to contact higher authorities. Others were afraid that doing so would cause panic or lead to the creature being locked away like something dangerous. The dog, meanwhile, never left the creature's side. When evening came, small lights turned on around the room. The creature looked up at them in amazement, as if seeing stars indoors. It raised its hand toward one of the lights and created a faint glow from its fingertips, mimicking the room's light. The glow was soft and harmless. The dog tilted his head, fascinated. One rescuer brought a bowl of warm soup. The creature pointed toward the dog, almost asking if the dog would taste it first. The dog sniffed the bowl, then looked at the creature. The rescuer laughed softly and dipped a small spoon into the soup, tasting it himself to show it was safe. Only then did the creature try it. Its eyes widened slightly, It must have liked the taste. Night arrived quietly. The desert cooled down again, and the air smelled faintly of sand and distant wind. The creature grew sleepy, its movements slower and softer. It lay down on the bed, and the dog curled up right next to it, placing his head gently near the creature's shoulder. The creature reached out and touched the dog's back, then rested its hand there as its eyes closed. But before it fell asleep completely, the creature lifted its hand and pointed at the window. The rescuer opened the curtain slightly, and the creature stared at the stars outside. A long breath escaped from its lips, a breath filled with longing. It probably remembered whatever world it came from, whoever it had lost, whoever wasn't with it anymore. The dog nudged its hand gently, reminding it that it wasn't alone now. Something about the dog's presence softened the sadness in the creature's eyes. Then, in the quiet of the room, the creature used its fingers to trace a small symbol on the dog's forehead soft. Careful, almost ceremonial. Nobody knew what the symbol meant, but it seemed like a gesture of trust, maybe even gratitude. The dog didn't move. He accepted it proudly. A rescuer whispered, "I think it sees him like family now." And it was true. The creature might not have understood Earth's language, rules, or people, but it understood one thing clearly. The dog was its protector. Its friend? Its safe place. Later in the night, when everyone else had stepped out to plan next steps, the creature sat up suddenly. Its body trembled with fear. The dog immediately stood and barked once, low and alert. The creature pointed at the sky through the window, its eyes wide, full of panic. The rescuers rushed back in. One of them looked outside. In the distance, far above the desert, strange lights were moving slowly, silently. Scanning the area. Something was searching for the creature. Something not from Earth. And whatever it was. The creature did not want to be found. The dog growled softly, standing between the creature and the window, ready to protect it from whatever was coming. The peaceful bond of the day vanished, replaced by the unsettling truth. The creature had not crashed by accident. It had been running, and the danger it feared had finally found its way back. The night was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning inside the shelter. Outside, the desert wind rustled faintly, carrying the cool night air across the sand. Inside the room, the creature lay on the bed, its eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The faint glow from its fingertips still lingered, as if it could not completely let go of its own strange energy. The dog sat beside it, alert, ears twitching at every small sound. It was clear that both of them felt something, the creature's unease and the dog's instinctive readiness to protect. Suddenly, the creature tensed. Its fingers twitched, and it pointed toward the window. The dog's ears perked immediately. The humans in the room noticed the gesture and instinctively turned to look outside. In the distance, the desert seemed to shimmer with strange lights, moving slowly but deliberately across the dunes. They were not ordinary lights, not stars or reflections. They were mechanical, precise, and searching. Whoever or whatever these were, they were looking for the creature. The dog growled softly but firmly, positioning himself between the bed and the window. The creature clutched the dog's fur as if drawing strength from him. Its breathing was quick, shallow, and frightened. The humans had to act, but they also had to be careful. The creature's fear was real, and it had learned to trust only a few beings, and none more than the dog. One of the rescuers whispered that they needed to secure the doors and windows immediately. Another suggested setting up surveillance around the shelter, trying to ensure no one could approach unnoticed. But the creature made a sudden gesture, pointing at the door, then the dog, then the approaching lights. It was clear that it understood what was happening and knew that the danger was very real. The dog growled again, louder this time, warning anyone who might be nearby. The creature's trembling hand rested on the dog's head, pressing down slightly, as if asking him to protect it no matter what. The humans quickly moved, barricading the windows with available furniture and preparing to defend the room as best they could. Even though the danger was unknown, everyone understood one simple fact: the creature must not be taken, hurt, or separated from its protector. Outside, the strange lights grew brighter. The creatures controlling them were methodical. They scanned the desert carefully, moving in a pattern that indicated they were tracking something very specific. One rescuer noted that the lights were too precise to belong to Earth technology. He whispered that whatever had chased the creature to this planet was not human, and it had means far beyond anything they had ever seen. Inside the room, the creature's energy began to react. Its hands glowed faintly, casting blue shadows across the walls. The dog pressed closer to its side, sensing its fear, sensing the need to stay calm. The creature's breathing slowed slightly when it felt the dog's steady presence. It seemed to realize that, for the first time in its journey on Earth, it had a true ally, someone or something that could protect it without question. Suddenly, a low hum reverberated through the walls. The dog's ears shot forward. The creature's eyes widened, glowing softly in response. The humans froze. They could hear the vibrations through the floor, the subtle shift of air around the shelter. Something was approaching the building, but moving with stealth and intent. The creature's panic grew, but the dog stood tall, bristling, making it clear that anyone attempting to get closer would face resistance. The humans whispered urgently, discussing options. Evacuating the creature was dangerous. The lights outside might detect movement. Hiding it further inside the building seemed safer, but the creature could not be confined without causing fear or distress. It was a delicate balance, and the dog seemed to understand it intuitively. He moved closer to the creature, placing himself in a protective arc, ready to respond to any immediate threat. The creature lifted its glowing hands toward the ceiling. Soft sparks shimmered in the air. It seemed ready to defend itself if necessary. But the dog remained calm, keeping its head level, its eyes fixed on the door, silently telling the creature, "You are not alone. You are safe with me." The humans watching felt a shiver down their spines at the strength of this bond, a bond that transcended species and worlds. Outside, the strange lights shifted. It became apparent that they were narrowing their search toward the shelter itself. The rescuers quickly worked to cover windows and obscure entry points. One suggested turning off all the lights, keeping the room as dark as possible. The creature nodded slightly, understanding that darkness might help hide them. The dog adjusted his position, pressing against the creature's legs, blending into the shadows. Together, they seemed almost inseparable, two beings acting as one against the unknown threat. Minutes passed. The lights outside hovered closer. A mechanical hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground. The creature's glow flickered in response, more intense, more urgent. It was preparing to act, but the dog's presence reminded it to stay calm, to trust that protection was already there. Every time the creature tensed, the dog nudged it gently, anchoring it to the present, keeping fear from spiraling into panic. Suddenly, a window rattled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The humans froze. The dog barked sharply, charging toward the window as the creature ducked instinctively. The dog's bark was more than a warning. It was a declaration. Whoever or whatever was outside had to know that this creature was under protection, and any attempt to take it would be met with fierce resistance. The lights outside shifted again, moving away from the immediate shelter. The dog remained alert, ears forward, eyes scanning every corner of the room. The creature relaxed slightly, feeling that the immediate danger had passed, but understanding that it was not gone entirely. It placed a hand on the dog's back and whispered a faint musical sound. The dog responded with a soft whine, reassuring it that he would not leave. The humans around them exhaled collectively. The danger had been real, but it had not succeeded in reaching them. The creature slowly stood, shaky but determined. It held its glowing hands slightly out in front, ready to defend if necessary. The dog walked beside it, silent and steadfast. Together, they seemed ready for anything. One rescuer suggested moving the creature to an even more secure location, deeper inside the facility. The dog positioned himself in front of the creature as they walked, ensuring that every step was safe. The creature's confidence grew with each movement, knowing that the dog would not allow harm to come near. Every time the creature faltered, the dog's paw nudged it forward, guiding, protecting, and silently communicating that together they could face any threat. Hours passed, and the lights outside finally retreated, vanishing into the desert. The creature's glow dimmed. The room became quiet again, and the dog curled up beside it, head resting gently on its lap. The humans watched, amazed by the bond they had witnessed. No words had been needed, yet the connection between the creature and the dog had kept them alive. The dog had sensed the threat, had reacted perfectly, and had protected a being far more fragile than itself. The creature leaned into the dog, eyes closed, breathing slowly and steadily. For the first time in what felt like forever, it allowed itself to feel safe. The dog stayed alert, ears twitching occasionally, but body relaxed. In that quiet moment, the humans realized that fear and danger could come from anywhere, but courage and loyalty could be found in the most unexpected places. The night ended with a sense of calm returning. The creature slept lightly, the dog remaining as a silent sentinel. Outside, the desert returned to its natural stillness, but inside, the bond between the alien princess and her protector had grown stronger, unbreakable, and ready for whatever came next. The threat had been real, the danger had been imminent, but the loyalty of one brave dog had ensured that the creature survived another night. The morning sun filtered gently through the small shelter's window, casting warm, golden light across the room. The creature stirred, blinking slowly as the light touched its face. The dog, still curled beside it, lifted his head and watched carefully. Every movement the creature made was cautious, measured, as though testing whether this day would be safe, as though waiting for the world to prove itself once again. But the dog remained calm, a steady presence, silently telling the creature that nothing would harm it here. The humans who had stayed through the night moved quietly around the room. They placed fresh blankets on the bed, filled a bowl with water, and left simple food nearby. Every gesture was careful, designed to reassure the creature without overwhelming it. The creature's eyes followed their movements, studying them, but not with fear this time. It seemed to understand that they meant no harm, that they had become part of its small circle of safety. The creature slowly sat up, its legs still unsteady, but with the dog at its side, it felt supported. Its fingers lightly touched the dog's head, and the dog leaned in, resting his chin on the creature's shoulder. That small gesture, so simple, yet so full of meaning, was enough to calm the creature entirely. Its breathing slowed, its muscles relaxed, and it allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to form on its lips. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, bright and warm under the morning sun. The humans spoke softly among themselves, planning how to ensure the creature's safety. They understood that this being had been running from danger for a long time, that it had no family nearby, no allies, except for the dog who had chosen it without hesitation. It was clear to everyone that the bond between the creature and the dog was more than just companionship. It was trust, loyalty, and protection woven together into something unbreakable. The creature reached for a small notebook that one of the rescuers had left behind. It had been practicing drawing, trying to communicate. Slowly, carefully, It drew shapes that represented its world, its ship, its home, even abstract symbols that hinted at the people it had lost. The dog stayed close, watching every movement, tilting his head as if he understood that these drawings were important. The creature's hand occasionally brushed the dog's fur for reassurance, as if asking silently, "Am I safe?" The dog responded by nudging its hand with his nose, comforting it without needing words. The rescuers marveled at the quiet connection between them. They had expected fear, chaos, confusion, but instead they saw patience, understanding, and the unspoken dialogue of trust. The creature did not speak earth languages. The dog could not explain in human words, but somehow, together, they communicated more clearly than most humans ever could doubt as the day went on. The creature tried to explore the small shelter. Its steps were cautious at first, but each time it ventured further, the dog stayed close, walking beside it, stopping whenever it faltered. The creature would reach out to touch a wall, a table, or a window frame, trying to understand its surroundings. Every time it stumbled or hesitated, the dog nudged it forward. A gentle but firm guide through a world that was still unfamiliar and strange. The humans tried to engage gently as well, offering food, soft blankets, or small objects to examine. The creature would look at them curiously, but often waited for the dog's approval before interacting. If the dog sniffed, explored, or nudged the object first, the creature felt safe enough to follow. It was clear that, for the creature, trust was built one step at a time, and the dog had become the measure of that trust. As evening approached, the creature sat on the floor, its legs stretched out. It looked at the sky through the window, where the first stars began to appear. Its eyes reflected a mix of wonder and sadness, memories of the home it had lost. The dog rested his head on its lap, offering warmth and reassurance. The creature's fingers stroked the dog's fur gently, a silent gesture of gratitude and companionship. The humans stood quietly nearby, giving space while keeping a watchful eye. They knew that this was a sacred moment between the two, a bond forged through fear, survival, and unwavering loyalty. Later, a gentle hum outside caught everyone's attention. The creature froze, instantly alert. Its hands glowed faintly, a defensive response. The dog stood immediately, ears forward, body tense, ready to protect. The humans tensed too, but nothing approached. The creature's glow faded slowly, and it sank back slightly, realizing the immediate threat had passed. The dog stayed close, never letting it feel alone. That night, the creature's fear was no longer paralyzing, because it had learned, through the dog's presence, that protection and loyalty could exist in a world that had once been hostile and frightening. Over the next few days, the creature adapted more to its new environment. It explored corners of the shelter, learned the sound of the human voices that were friendly, and even began to respond to gentle gestures. It tried to mimic small things the humans did, like picking up objects or drinking water carefully. But no matter what it learned, it always returned to the dog's side. The dog had become its anchor, its guide, its safest point in a world that was still mostly unknown. The humans slowly began to understand that they had witnessed something extraordinary. This creature from another world had survived a journey full of fear, uncertainty, and danger. And yet, it had thrived not because of human intervention alone, but because of a dog who had shown trust when everyone else hesitated, who had offered protection when no one else dared, who had built a bond that no words could describe. One night, the creature curled up on the bed, the dog lying tightly against it. The humans dimmed the lights, leaving only a small glow for comfort. The creature whispered soft, melodic sounds, almost like a lullaby, though no one understood the words. The dog listened, his head resting lightly on the creature's shoulder. The sounds seemed to carry a mixture of gratitude, relief, and a promise of loyalty. For the first time, The creature felt a kind of peace that had been absent for as long as it could remember Dot in the following weeks. The creature and the dog became inseparable. They ate together, explored together, and rested together. The creature would often reach out to touch the dog's head, chest, or back, and the dog would respond with a gentle nudge or a warm lean. Their connection was a constant source of comfort and strength. The humans who cared for them marveled at how the presence of one animal could transform fear into trust, despair into hope, and isolation into companionship. Gradually, the creature began to show signs of confidence. It stood taller, moved with more purpose, and even attempted to communicate with simple gestures and drawings. The dog remained its guide and protector through every step. When it hesitated, the dog nudged it forward. When it was afraid, the dog offered warmth and calm. Through the dog's loyalty, the creature began to experience life as more than survival. It began to experience life as safety, as trust, and as friendship. One evening, after the sun had set and the first stars appeared, the creature looked out the window and raised its glowing hands toward the sky. Its light flickered softly, almost like it was sending a message. The dog leaned into it, pressing his head against its shoulder. The humans watched silently, understanding that this was a moment of connection, not just between the creature and the dog, but also with the world it had left behind. Even though it could not return, it could now experience care, protection, and companionship on this new planet. Months passed, and the bond between the creature and the dog only grew stronger. The dog never left its side, not during sleep, meals, or exploration. The creature relied on the dog not only for safety, but for emotional stability, for comfort, for reassurance that it could exist in a world that was once hostile and uncertain. The dog had become its family, its protector, and its friend. Together, they faced every day with courage, patience, and trust. The humans who watched this bond understood its importance. They realized that the greatest acts of heroism did not always come from humans alone. Sometimes, the quiet courage of a loyal companion, the selfless protection of one being for another, could change a life forever. And in this case, it had saved a life in ways no human could have done alone. Finally, one quiet night, as the stars shone above and the desert lay still, the creature rested its head against the dog. Its eyes closed, its glowing hands dimmed, and a gentle sigh escaped its lips. The dog, still alert but calm, pressed his nose softly against its hand. It was clear that the creature was finally at peace. It had survived the dangers of its journey, found safety, and discovered loyalty, love, and trust in a world that had once seemed so alien. The dog had not only protected it, but had given it hope, companionship, and a reason to feel at home. In the silence of the night, the shelter held two beings from entirely different worlds, connected not by language, not by origin, but by loyalty and trust. One had traveled across the stars, forsaken and alone. The other was a humble dog, brave and unwavering. Together, they had found something rare and beautiful, a true bond that could not be broken, a friendship that would endure, and a life rebuilt on trust, love, and protection. And in that quiet moment, as the world slept outside, it was clear that the creature would never be alone again. Its protector, its companion, its friend, the dog who had refused to step back when everyone else had, would always be there. And third,